What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to NFL Turf Talk. I am one half of your host here, Dylan Davis. You can check me out on Twitter at DylanJD98. To my right, my faithful co-host, Scotty. Check him out on Twitter at Scotty Drown as we stream to you guys, as always, on DSM Media's Twitch, Twitter, YouTube, and Facebook page. If you're new to the channel, head on over to at DSM_media on Twitter. Hit that follow button. Check out the link tree in our bio. If you guys want to be interactive on today's show, head on over to the YouTube channel, hit that subscribe button, like this video. We greatly appreciate it. And that is where we are able to pull up all of your comments today. Ask us any questions on the division, give us your thoughts, let us know your rankings as well. George checking in what's going on. George, Phil, host of Trending in the AM here on DSM Media. But Scotty, what is going on?
What is up, man? Good morning to you. Happy Sunday. Happy Sunday to all the Birds fans as well. None of the other NFL fans, of course. No, I'm just kidding. But, obviously we got deep into the preseason football this week. But I'm mostly excited to be talking the NFC East here. So cheers to Sunday. We're one step closer to, those holy NFL Sundays during the NFL regular season in the fall.
The rituals.
We get to sit down and we get to pray to our squads. We get to
just
focus on fantasy football. So
just do
I can't
nothing
wait
for 12 hours.
I love it.
Just
I love
absolutely
it.
Sit down. There's nothing better. But yeah, man, you said it. We're going to be breaking
absolutely sit down.
We're going to be breaking down the NFC East division today, as Scotty said, and this one will be a little more fun because it involves the Eagles. Before we get into that, we'll also be talking about the Eagles preseason debut versus the New York Jets on Friday night. What we saw, what we liked, maybe what we disliked. We'll get through that quickly. And then also don't forget our all division draft at the end of this show. So stay tuned for that. This one should be a fun one, a little bit more fun than some of the other divisions. And actually, this is the last divisional breakdown. So this is it for the summer. And then we'll get into some other fun topics heading into the regular season. As Scotty mentioned, we're only a few short weeks away. But listen, man, I want to get your thoughts first on Friday night's game versus New York. Obviously, the starters played one possession, but it looked really good. I get it's the Jets. I get it's preseason. I get it's one touchdown, one possession. But tell me what you liked on that first drive.
Yeah, I mean, the obvious one has to be, Jalen Hurts, kind of not only what he was able to do on that first drive. He was obviously perfect. He had a perfect quarterback rating. He was 6 for 6 from the field, touchdown on the first drive, right? But not only that, the poise, right? Like he gets hit out of bounds. There's a bunch of yelling, Sirianni screaming at sideline to sideline. And, Jalen Hurts just gets up,
awesome.
Keeps it moving. You know what I mean? He gets rocked. He gets up, he keeps it moving. And ultimately comes back, scores a touchdown with his legs. So he still showed us that dynamic ability. But then also, obviously that got called back with the Jordan Mailata holding call. Comes back very next play, or maybe a play later. So hits Dallas Goedert, wide open.
Great
Dallas
pass.
Goedert
Great
flies
read.
into the end zone. And it was beautiful the way that play laid out because, the commentators kind of got ahead of it. And we're talking about A.J. Brown coming right around that same area. And it was just a nice glimpse of what's to come because A.J. Brown's going to take attention. Devontae Smith's going to take attention from Goddard. So Goddard's going to find himself open sometimes. A.J. Brown's going to find himself wide open sometimes. Devontae Smith sometimes. So, this offense, it should be fun. Obviously, it was almost too perfect. So you got to take it with a grain of salt. Like you said, it's preseason. It's the Jets. It's not their real defense out on the field. It's not even the Eagles' real offense on the field in a sense. So with all that being said, it would probably went about as good as it could go as far as from the starter perspective, right?
100%. And this is one thing I wanted to touch on as well. So this was without Devontae Smith. And I think coming in, all the attention was on A.J. Brown, right? Like, that's what we kept hearing out of training camp, how much he's targeting him. Is it going to be maybe not a negative, but is it going to take away a little bit from this offense if he's just locked in on A.J. Brown? And that was the most beautiful thing. He hit Goddard once or twice. Obviously, he had the 20-yard touchdown pass to Goddard. Quez Watkins caught 2 balls, I believe. Like, he spread the ball. They utilized the middle of the field. he had very nice touch on that touchdown pass. So all in all, I was very happy with what he was able to accomplish. I have no idea what that noise is. So if you can hear that,
I thought that was like a new sound effect.
I don't even know what's behind this wall. So whatever it is, if that doesn't go away soon, we might have a problem. But what's the name? But you mentioned the hit, right? And I love how you brought up how he kept his poise and he just jogged back out. Let Mailata be the bodyguard, let them handle it for a second, and then get back to football. But he doesn't get involved with it. But what amateur hour, bro? Are you? And I know Saleh had choice words for his player after the game, and I forget who the defender was that hit him. Like he acknowledged that he was wrong and it was the heat of the moment kind of thing. But like, dude, it is the first drive of preseason.
Yeah.
And not only do you hit the starting quarterback late, you hit him 4 yards out of bounds to the neck and head area and basically throw your forearm into the dude's face. Like that is such BS, as Nick Sirianni was saying. And I love the fact, like, dude, it got me fired up. Like I was doing a fantasy draft live while it was happening, and I'm just looking at Sirianni going berserk on the line. And it was awesome to see have him have his players back. But I liked it. I liked it a lot.
Yeah, that definitely earned some points in Sirianni's book on my end as well. And I thought, just to kind of piggyback off what you said, I thought, that's exactly what you need to do for your young franchise. Well, let me slow down. I was about to say franchise quarterback for your young potential franchise quarterback. That being Jalen Hurts, and like you said, just Sirianni showing that aggression, and that's kind of like what we wondered if he had in him coming in, him coming in as a new coach last year, and he showed it in spurts throughout last season. He has command of the team, and I think that's the biggest thing you see there is like they believe in Sirianni, they know Sirianni has their backs, and I think that's huge.
Losing you here at the end, brother. Hold on. See if we can get you get the Wi-Fi figured out. But I agree with Scotty. I agree with the fact that it's nice to see Sirianni only as a second-year head coach, and you saw it last year in his rookie year. I'm going to put Scotty in the background. I'm not going to do my man like that and leave him up there frozen. So, Scotty, when you can get back in here, let me know. But he even had control of the locker room and control of his squad last year, especially towards the end and second half of the season. So that was very nice to see. George checking in again. Jets were setting the tone. You think that isn't a trickle-down effect from a defensive-minded head coach who was trying to establish his place in the franchise? 100%. But again, it was just a dirty, unnecessary type of physicality. It wasn't being physical between the lines. It wasn't being physical, on the field. It was a shot to the head, 5 yards out of bounds. Whether that's setting the tone or not, it was still stupid and it was still amateur hour. But just glossing over some of the other stuff that stood out on Friday's preseason debut. Kaiser White, obviously on the second possession, picks off Zach Wilson, already showing that he, an Eagles linebacker making a play, something we haven't seen in a very long time. So that was a lot of fun. And then obviously you have Nakobe Dean leading the team in tackles. I think he led, if not all of defenders, but all of rookies in the first week of preseason in tackles. Jordan Davis gathering all that attention from the Jets offensive line. That was beautiful to see because you cannot do that when the Eagles starters are out there with him. You cannot triple team Jordan Davis while Brandon Graham and Josh Sweat and Fletcher Cox or Javon Hargrave are next to him, because then that's just going to allow one-on-ones and mismatches all across the line of scrimmage. Scotty, I see you trying to get back in. I don't have a picture yet, buddy, but I just don't get why coaches get mad when players get hit like that. If you don't like that, don't play him. Well, bud, it was unnecessary roughness. It was a late hit to the head area 5 years after he was out of bounds. So, of course, the coach is going to get mad. You get mad in the regular season, you're going to get mad on the first possession of preseason. It was so unnecessary and such a dirty, stupid play to start the preseason off. But let's see if we can get Scotty figured out here. What else stood out to me over the course of this game? Obviously, Gardner Minshew looked better than what the reports were coming out of camp, so that's always a positive. Obviously, we know how the Eagles value their backup quarterback play here. If anything was to happen to Jalen Hurts, God forbid, knock on wood, this season, you need a viable backup, as we've seen in years past, to come in and maybe hold down the fort for a week or two. And, the reports coming out of camp was that Gardner is not going to be, where he's not looking like that guy at the moment. So, and then you had Reed Sinnett come in, heard a lot of good things about him. He almost led the Eagles to the game-winning drive with less than a minute left, but unfortunately, big kick return, and first preseason game ended in a very poor way. And yes, sir, George, thank you for reminding me. I almost forgot to bring this up. Cam Jurgens looked amazing on Friday night. Again, same thing, right? Kind of temper emotions here, kind of temper expectations. First preseason debut, Jets, but he looked really good. And this is the main point. Like, we know we're getting Kelsey back and we're all comfortable with that. But if Kelsey's not going to be 100% healthy this year, or even past this season, obviously, when we know he's no longer going to be here in Philadelphia, the future is looking bright at the offensive line position. And it helps in the moment now in terms of depth, like we talked about before, when you see guys like Landon Dickerson already step up the way he did last year, when you see guys like Jack Driscoll be able to be a plug-in piece and not only not kill you, but be extremely serviceable at the guard position, was really nice to see. See if I can get Scotty on the line here. Let's see where he's at. Sorry, everybody. All right, just texted him, see if we can get my man back in here. But we will see. Devin Allen probably is not going to make the squad, I would imagine. Love the speed. Love what he's done this offseason in other areas. But the guy to watch, who everyone's getting excited for, not just as a wide receiver, but, in the kick return game and the punt return game, Britton Covey. So we'll see, how he continues to look throughout camp and preseason. I know the Eagles are practicing right now with pads on, by the way. So interesting to see that. Restarted my modem, so hopefully Scotty gets back in here. Driscoll's taking a bit of a step back, was hoping more than a depth piece. I get that. But when you look, I'm just trying to figure out how this line's set up at the moment. You have Mailata, Kelsey, and Lane, and then you have Sayamalu and Dickerson. So really, they're at the moment, obviously, George, I get what you're saying. Maybe in the future, he's not looking like a guy you can plug in and start all 17 games. But for right now, there is no spot for him to start. So I think he's serviceable as a backup guard option if Sayamalu is not healthy. If something happens, again, knock on wood, to Landon Dickerson or something like that, then he'll be able to step up for this Eagles team. But kind of moving on to this division, let's see. Is he in? Uh-oh. Not a good Wi-Fi day here. I think mine's pretty bad too. Sorry guys if I'm stuttering here. Scotty's still struggling. Let's see.
Bro, I don't understand what the hell.
I know mine keeps glitching for sure, but we'll see if we can fix this. Scotty's got to head on over to the library to get the Wi-Fi right. Hold on. Are we good? Nope, not yet. It's just the world's smallest door. If it's behind me, no, it's not a door unless you're talking about Scotty's. But the one behind me, it's just, I don't even know what's back there. It's making a crazy noise at the moment.
Can you hear me? I mean, this is crazy.
I can hear you now.
Oh my God. I've never had so many issues.
Yeah. Good?
I think I'm good.
Yeah.
I think I'm good. All
right.
Bro, my internet is like not working at all. My internet's not working at all.
Yeah. So we'll see if we can continue to get through this show. If it continues to act up, we might be ending this one and then trying to get back on it in a few moments here on another stream, but we'll see what happens. But yeah, man, let's get into this divisional breakdown. We went over, I was discussing Cam Jurgens, Nakobe Dean, Kazir White, all that good stuff. A lot of positives coming out of Friday night for the Philadelphia Eagles, but I'm extremely excited to break down this division because there's a lot to look into. You texted me before the show started, who is the worst coach in this division? We'll be discussing that. The quarterback room is interesting in this division, from Dak to our situation with Hurts to Georgia's man Danny Dimes. Obviously, our good friend Carson Wentz is back in our division. So a lot of good stuff, but kind of just glossing over. I don't know if you have the additions and subtractions with you. But if you want to get us started with, let's start with Georgia's team, the New York Football Giants.
Yeah, that's a good place to start. So once again, apologies for the internet, guys. That is ridiculous. I'm contacting Xfinity as soon as I get off here because I'm kind of pissed about this. Okay, so as far as the Giants, it's a good place to start because you brought up who is the worst coach in the division. The Giants have a new head football coach. So we're talking about Brian Daboll from the Buffalo Bills. So offensive coordinator, the one that kind of, revamped Josh Allen's career. Mm-hmm. Josh Allen did start out slow as a rookie, brought Brian Daboll in, and he got him to the status that he is today, which is a potential MVP candidate. So I'm interested to see. This is something I know George has been, talking about for a while regarding like Joe Judge and his effect on Daniel Jones and what this could mean for Daniel Jones. I think Brian Daboll is the biggest pickup of the offseason for the Giants because I do think he is a good football coach. I do think that he can do some good things with this football team. Aside from Brian Daboll, it was really about the draft, bringing in some youth. You talk about Kayvon Thibodeau, who's the top pick. Oh, what? No, the number 2 pick in the draft. What pick did the Giants have?
Was he 4?
4? Were they 4th?
They
might
have
been. Right, but I feel like Drake London was 4th.
I'll look it up for you.
Yeah, no big deal. Top 5 pick, Kayvon Thibodeau. He's a hell of a player. They also brought in Wan'Dale Robinson, who has actually turned out to be a pretty good pickup. I think they have him slotted to start at the slot wide receiver, so a nice pickup there. Just talking about some of the guys they lost. A guy, Logan Ryan, who we know he had some choice words about the Eagles. He was a leader within their defense. He left. And then, of course, Joe Judge. He seemed like he was a poison there for that team. And that may be the biggest addition, may have been subtraction there.
Yeah.
But interested to hear your thoughts just regarding Brian Daboll, what you think he can do with the Giants there and Daniel Jones.
Thibodeau was the 5th overall pick in last year's draft, right below Sauce and the Jets. But obviously, I agree with you. The Brian Daboll addition could turn out to be big time for the Giants. And it's not even just the addition of him. It's addition by subtraction, getting rid of Joe Judge. That upgrade, the gap between these two head coaches. Now, I know this is a first-time gig for Daboll, but I do have a very high belief in what he'll be able to accomplish. Now, he, like you said, he was kind of the Josh Allen whisperer. I don't expect him to be the Daniel Jones whisperer, but I think he can get a little bit more out of this offense than you saw last year. Another big thing for them, obviously, you mentioned the youth, but another huge step for them is if Saquon Barkley can stay healthy. My man, since coming out of Penn State, has just not been able to stay healthy. Yeah. We know how their offensive line has been. We know that the Giants, we know what Danny Dimes has been. So he's kind of struggled to find space to have a healthy offensive line in front of him, but him himself has not been able to stay on the field, and that'll be big. And apparently he's looked really good so far in camp. So if he can stay healthy, then the New York Giants have something.
I agree.
Only team to win a preseason game.
Yeah, so I also see the Giants can have legit the best D-line in the division. I don't know about that. They'll have a really good defensive line. The Washington Commanders have a hell of a defensive line. The Eagles obviously have a hell of a defensive line, and even the Cowboys, Micah Parsons, DeMarcus Lawrence, they got some guys on their defensive line too. So I don't know if I'd go that far. I'm not going to assess them as that, but they definitely have some young, nice youth on that defensive line for sure with Kayvon Thibodeau. So it will be interesting to watch. But the preseason games, the wins, I don't think we should be talking about that. But you know how that goes. But just looking at, obviously Brian Daboll himself added to the coaching staff for the Giants. Is he instantly? And I know George has already pointed out what we're getting at here, and it's what I believe will be the downfall of the Cowboys. We can maybe get into that a little bit later, but is Brian Daboll instantly a better head coach than Mike McCarthy? Is the unknown better than Mike McCarthy?
Yes. Yes. I don't know. Mike McCarthy, the name's there, right? And that's why he got this gig in Dallas. The name's there. He's a Super Bowl champion. Well, he won a Super Bowl with Aaron Rodgers, and they had a lot of success together offensively, and they had a lot of success and winning records and winning seasons over in Green Bay. He didn't have to do anything. You were coaching an MVP candidate for year after year, right? So now he gets to Dallas, and we can kind of get into Dallas's addition and subtraction here, but he gets to Dallas and they're undisciplined, as you saw multiple times throughout last season. As you know, I think they had 17 penalties. I know it's a preseason game, but that just goes to the lack of discipline within the locker room and the culture that's being built there. But I think that Mike McCarthy is by far the worst head coach in this division, and I would take Brian Daboll today over him.
100%. I'm seeing the Wi-Fi signal. That's why I'm a little hesitant. Am I lagging there?
You're good, but you're blurry. So we'll see. We'll see what happens here.
All right. Yes. Okay. So where do we want to go next? So we talked about the Giants.
We can get into Dallas. Yeah.
Dallas. So obviously the big subtractions for Dallas this offseason has to be Amari Cooper, Randy Gregory on that defensive line, one of their best pass rushes. Amari Cooper was their wide receiver one for a long time. What looks like CeeDee Lamb's going to take that throne now. Aside from those two big losses, you also lost La'el Collins. I believe he was playing left tackle.
Yeah.
Connor Williams was right tackle. He got replaced as well, so they lost Connor Williams, who was honestly the most penalized tackle in football. So that was interesting. They lost Cedric Wilson, wide receiver 3. Wide receiver 4, I guess, behind Gallup, but would have been wide receiver 3 if he stayed. Nonetheless, he's on the Dolphins now. And then they're tight end 2, Blake Jarwin. As far as some of the additions, they had James Washington, wide receiver from Pittsburgh. Dante Fowler Jr. Yes, which Anthony Barr also was added. He's hurt as well. And then Jalen Tolbert, I thought, was a nice wide receiver they added in the draft. It looks like he's slotted to be wide receiver 3. But, as far as Dallas, it seems like more losses than additions to me. I don't know how you feel about that.
So yeah, when we've been breaking down these divisions, I feel like there's been one in at least each division where we've sat here and said they're maybe not worse, but they did nothing to improve. They're not better than they were last year. And I look at this Cowboys roster, and you mentioned the losses on the offensive line. That's a huge question mark right now at this point. You lose Blake Jarwin. Now, I know a lot of people are very high on Dalton Schultz, and he was tight end 1 there. But Blake Jarwin did a lot for this Cowboys offense the last couple of seasons. They ran a lot of 2 tight end sets. They utilized the middle of the field with Dak. As you mentioned, Amari Cooper leaving. Now, obviously, Amari Cooper battled injuries last year. Amari Cooper's another year older, but he was at the time wide receiver 1. I remember week 1 out there against Tampa, and he went for what, like $120?
He torched him.
And so that's a huge loss. And then you mentioned on the defensive line losing Randy Gregory. He's now in Denver. It's big for them, man. So it's not that they're worse per se. Maybe they are a little bit, but they did nothing to improve. And if you're a team with the expectations of the Dallas Cowboys, obviously not myself, but Cowboys are always top 5 in Super Bowl odds and top 3 in Super Bowl odds and blah blah blah. They're not there. They're just not roster wise. They maybe have maybe the 6th or 7th best roster in the NFC.
Yeah,
maybe.
And, the crazy part is everybody that you hear talking about Dallas, talking highly about Dallas, everybody that's picking Dallas to win the division, their only talking point is literally Dak Prescott. That is the one advantage that Cowboys have. And yes, it arguably the most important advantage, right? The quarterback position, the leader of your team. Dak, on the other hand, has showed that he does not show up in big moments.
Yeah.
So I don't know if that's necessarily an advantage if you don't have the roster that's there to carry Dak to all those high numbers and all the success and the wins that he's carried to throughout the regular season. Is their defense going to be better? It's 1 year more, one year more of building chemistry, that one more year together, that they've had an offseason together to build that chemistry. They were a solid defensive unit last year. Trayvon Diggs had a bunch of interceptions. We all know that. But he also was one of the most beat corners in the NFL last year.
He gave up the most yards in all of
the exactly. NFL. So that's your number one corner, and that's who's going to be guarding guys like A.J. Brown in the division, Terry McLaurin, Kenny Golladay, I don't know what the Giants, whatever. But just throughout the league, he's going to be the guy guarding number one. So right. Do what you may. Obviously, Michael Parsons is a huge factor. If he continues to develop, if he shows another side, he could be a defensive player of the year candidate for sure. And then the only other thing I wanted to point out with the Cowboys, before we move on, Randy Gregory, not only did they lose him, but the way that they lost him.
Yeah.
Signed back. He agreed to a contract and then dipped out. And I feel like it was right after Russell Wilson got traded, or maybe he knew that Russell Wilson was getting traded to Denver. And he's like, nah, I'm heading to Denver. And, I thought that was very interesting. That's demoralizing for a Cowboys team that was trying to bring back one of their top pass rushers from last year. So I love that. I love that happened to the Cowboys nonetheless.
Diggs plays in phase. I don't know what that means. Do you know what that means?
I think what I would imagine he's saying he plays off a little bit more. He does take a lot of gambles as well, so I get that part of it. It's just the
only point of the
way to play corner,
right? But the only point of the little stab at Trevon Diggs is the fact that he was viewed last year because of the interception total as a top corner, as a lockdown, and it's just so far from the truth. He's just not that. He's not a lockdown corner. He's a playmaker, but he's not a lockdown corner for Dallas. So just a little dig there at Trevon Diggs. But let's get into the Commanders, man, because they made a very interesting addition.
Yes, and you would probably say, aside from the Eagles, it may be the biggest division addition overall. And you're talking about Carson Wentz there, who they traded for from the Indianapolis Colts. To bring Carson Wentz in to, obviously man their offense. Carson Wentz last season, man, I have the numbers written down here, and, he gets blown up. It's like, is this his last chance? I know you saw the reporter that asked him those, like, cringeworthy questions. I mean, I thought Philadelphia media was bad. I don't know if that was Washington media or if that was just NFL media specifically.
Network,
but that was brutal to even just listen to or watch right there, and it was just awkward. And I thought Carson Wentz handled it really well. But looking at Wentz's numbers last year, 3,563 passing yards. That was 18th in the NFL. 27 TDs. That was 10th in the NFL. He had a QBR of 54.7. That was 9th in the NFL. Those numbers, right? They sound like a fringe top 10 quarterback.
I'm going to say something.
I'm going
to say something that's not highly approved. This statement's not highly approved by a lot of people. Carson Wentz was good last year.
Yeah.
Let's just get that straight. Let's get that out of the way. Obviously we saw some of the cringeworthy interceptions of not getting rid of the ball, some of the stuff, some of the old habits he had here in 2020. Obviously we know
interceptions, I think 7.
Yeah. But they highlighted them over and over again, especially the 2 versus Tennessee that 1 week. And then obviously not being able to beat Jacksonville in week 18 was the tipping point. And we all know the locker room issue, rumors, all that kind of stuff. But in terms of on-field play, Carson Wentz was good last year. And I actually like this addition for Washington. And I like it for him as well, because something he struggled with here in Philly, we always talked about how they never put a wide receiver 1 around him. Like how last year we had a bad wide receiver room. We didn't even have that we didn't have Devontae Smith when he was here, right? We brought back Deshaun Jackson. We had a shell of Alshon Jeffrey. We drafted Jalen Reagor in the first round. All this stuff. He goes to Washington now. Terry McLaurin, true wide receiver 1.
Yep.
Antonio Gibson can catch the ball out of the backfield. Like I kind of like what he has to work with. So we'll see what he does.
And they have a solid defense too, and they have a
Curtis Samuel.
really good head coach as well in Ron Rivera. So I do like the balance that is, above average. I mean, yeah, I don't know. I guess if you're picking his spots, then yeah, you would probably say just about above average. He didn't lead them to the playoffs. He didn't show up in certain moments, so you do have to factor that in. But the numbers are good nonetheless. Um, with the Commanders, I think what George said there. Watch Carson have an MVP season. Would you really be surprised? Would I be surprised? I would be surprised. But as far as like, does he have that in him? We know that he has that inside of him, and we know that the Washington football team last year was a pretty solid team, even being led by Taylor Heineke. So like, add Carson Wentz if he can go there. This is the big if, and I think even if he goes there and puts up, let's say, above average numbers from last year, what do those numbers look like in real time? What do those interceptions, those turnovers look like in real time? Because I feel the argument on the other side is, only 7 interceptions, but those 7 interceptions were just crucial. I mean, you talked about 2 against Tennessee. That's your division rival that you ended up not making the playoffs over.
Right.
So, I mean, you're looking at Wentz. It seems like potentially the best situation that he's been in maybe since that Super Bowl season with the Eagles, right, where he had that MVP caliber season. And like you said, I do think that Terry McLaurin is quite possibly the best wide receiver that he's played with. I know some people would argue, Alshon Jeffrey, but that was very, spotty.
Minimal.
Alshon Jeffrey was very spotty as a wide receiver. He had his moments, but Terry McLaurin is definitely that consistent wide receiver one that he's been lacking his whole career. So it'll be interesting to see how it plays out. It'll be interesting to see if he can mesh with that locker room, if there's any other disruptions in the locker room that were mentioned, like in Indy, in Philly. And then, they lose Brandon Sheriff, their right guard, I believe. They add in Andrew Norwell, Trey Turner to replenish that offensive line. So that's going to be a huge part, keeping him protected, keeping him away from all those mistakes that he was causing. Right. But yeah, I don't know. It's interesting to think about where Carson Wentz could go this season with the Washington Commanders.
Well, they're a very interesting team, and I know we're going to break them down on offense and defense, but they're interesting because the last couple of years, last year they struggled, and obviously losing Chase Young, and their defense just didn't seem to be up to par, especially in the beginning of the year. But the last couple of years, they've been right there. Even the year they were they a wild card team, or they didn't win the division that year, right? When they lost to Tampa and Tom, they were a wild card team, I believe.
Yeah, I'm pretty sure.
But like their whole thing was they haven't had QB1. If he can be QB1, the Commanders can shock you. I'm not saying the Commanders are going to win double-digit games. I think Washington could be anywhere from a 7-10 to a 9-8 type of team, 8-9, somewhere right around there. So we'll see with them. He either takes them to the net. They're either not a competitor, but they're either viable and can be competitive within this division, or they're going to sink again when it comes time to sink or swim. But Let's get over to the Eagles because addition.
And where I'm going to start, and it might catch people off guard with the Eagles, but you could almost, before you even get to the additions, you could talk about adding just by subtracting, in a sense. I mean, you talk about some of the names that they lost this offseason. Now, Rodney McLeod, that was my guy. I don't know what he's going to do in Indy. I think he's a good fit there. We'll see if he has a little bit left in the tank. But nonetheless, I had no problem with letting him walk in this sense. We needed to revamp that safety position. Nate Herbig, we know, offensive line depth, great. Hassan Ridgeway, goes to the 49ers, I think, defensive tackle. Jannard Avery, another guy we traded for, never really fulfilled what we traded for, as far as what we were looking for from him. Steven Nelson, he was okay last year. Wasn't the CB2 that we were dreaming of course. And then Alex Singleton, he was a guy that was really hyped up by fans, but really, really below average, if that.
Good guy. Good
dude, though. Good dude. So, just thinking about what they lost, they didn't really lose that much. The most they lost would probably be the draft compensation they gave up for their biggest acquisition in A.J. Brown. Which, speaking of, they bring in A.J. Brown, an arguably top 10 wide receiver, to go with Devontae Smith, to go with Quez Watkins. Along in that wide receiver room, they bring in Zach Pascal, who has some history with Sirianni from Indianapolis, who, by the way, I wanted to throw that in before my internet connection got dropped off there. Zach Pascal, I know it was only 2 catches. I liked what I saw. He gets open. He finds niches in the field, and I like that. Could see him take Greg Ward's spot, quite honestly. He looks like that type of player, but better. Talk about the defense. I mean, the defense is really where they have amped it up, and that's what I'm most excited about. That's what I'm going to be raving about on this episode. I imagine you will be too. Hassan Reddick. We needed some young, elite pass rushing. We, not a draft a guy and hope to develop him into an elite pass rusher. We need a guy that is proven, can get sacks, get to the quarterback. Hassan Reddick is that guy. You talk about James Bradbury, a late offseason acquisition to fulfill that CB2 role. He's been impressive in camp. He's been highly regarded so far. Jaquiski Tart, maybe not, the biggest pickup of the offseason as far as a safety, but another serviceable safety, which gives you now, in my opinion, options. 3 serviceable safeties that you can throw in the field there with Epps and Ant Harris, which, by the way, Ant Harris, we haven't heard much about this offseason.
Yeah, toothache.
Right. And then we have to look to the draft. I mean, Jordan Davis, 1st round pick. Nakobe Dean, third round pick. Cam Jurgens looked amazing in preseason the other night. 2nd round pick. Kaiser White, yes, you are spot on with that. Had an interception in the preseason game the other night. He's a rangy coverage linebacker, but led the Chargers in tackles last season. So a lot to be excited about here. How are you feeling? I know, obviously excited, but, what are your true feelings when you look at the additions the Eagles made this offseason?
My true feelings are that they have a legitimate top 10 defense and higher. Like, I think the floor is 10th. I think on paper right now, you're looking at probably like a top 6, top 7 type of defense. I'm super, super amped as to what Howie added defensively. And you just mentioned like the losses, right? Okay, well, you lost CB2 and Steven Nelson. Well, you upgraded him with a guy that could be CB1 that's coming from a team that was where he was cornerback 1. Now he's across from Darius Slay. You mentioned losing Gerard Avery. He was kind of that edge rushing linebacker they tried to utilize. You upgrade him to the guy who's 3rd in sacks in the last 2 or 3 seasons in Hassan Reddick. You mentioned Kaiser White. You lose Alex Singleton. You bring in Kaiser White and Nakobe Dean.
Yeah.
You bring in Jordan Davis. Again, saying not human. Hotel. Massive. Words cannot describe this kid. Man. Like, dude, he's younger than me. Like, think about that. He's younger than me. That is terrifying. And he makes Fletcher Cox look tiny. That's wild to me. So, and then you obviously, like you mentioned Zach Pascal and A.J. Brown, just bringing a wide receiver 1 to this room, and then another piece that is serviceable, that is a depth piece that can get in the end zone, that can play within the 20. I think he's like 6'3", 6'2", so he's a little bit bigger of a wide receiver, kind of a red zone threat. So, like everything I'm seeing, like everything I'm hearing, they're at practice right now. Obviously, I haven't been on Twitter, so I haven't seen any of the reports. But they practice with pads today, which I kind of like that.
Nice.
Keep the energy up, keep the tempo up. We had a game Friday. We're going to practice with the pads on today. So we'll see, man. But 40 minutes in, and we still have to break down the rest of the division.
I know. I know. The internet trouble didn't help, but nonetheless, here we are. And then just commenting on what George just said here, talking about Josh Jobe. He looked really disruptive in that preseason game the other night. I like the action that he was involved in there. So I'm with you there, George. Hopefully, at least one of these other corners, right? The Josh Jobe, the Zach McPherson. Who else do we got? Josiah Scott. So we got a couple guys. Tay Gowan. Hopefully, one of these guys can prove to be serviceable, playable. Because we know not all of these guys are going to stay healthy throughout the season. Yes, that is a dominant top 3 when you look at your top 3 starting corners as far as Slay, Bradbury, and Maddox. But definitely need one of those young guys to step up and just be playable.
Yeah, 100% agree with you. But speaking of these guys, let's get into kind of breaking down this division, kind of not position by position, but attack by attack. So let's start on the defensive side of the ball, since that's where our focus is. And let's start in the secondary, Scotty. So
Yeah.
pass defense in terms of scheme, in terms of defensive coordinator, in terms of personnel. Let's rank this pass defense. What do you have 4 through 1 here?
Yeah. So pass defense, 4 through 1. I have the Giants at number 4. So I'm coming in with the Giants. I think the Giants are young. I would look at the Giants. They had a solid defense last year. I think they still have some solid players there. Aaron Robinson, Xavier McKinney. I love Adoree Jackson as well. Good pickup there. But nonetheless, I think when you look at the rest of the division, you'll understand where I'm coming from here. Number 3, we look at the Washington Commanders. William Jackson and Kendall Fuller, I like that combo at corner. They're both guys that have been proven throughout their careers. Now, Kendall Fuller didn't look the greatest for Washington last year. He's looking to have another step up year from what he had from last year. Coming in at number 2, I have the Dallas Cowboys. Maybe have them a little bit high, but I am factoring in that pass rush and what Micah Parsons can bring to the quarterback, DeMarcus Lawrence brings to the quarterback. Then Malik Hooker, Trayvon Diggs. I know we were ragging on Trayvon Diggs earlier. Turnovers are turnovers. I'm going to show appreciation there. He gets a lot of interceptions. Those are game-changing plays. That does help your team. And I do like turnovers. I like interceptions, so I can't knock him there. I just knock him when it comes to a guy like Darius Slay. Number 1, as you can see what I'm leading up to here, I have the Philadelphia Eagles with the number 1 secondary, secondary and pass rush combined, I would say here. So you look at Darius Slay, you look at James Bradbury. We've already talked about them, but then we also have Anthony Harris, Marcus Epps, who everybody has been extremely high on so far this offseason. Jaquiski Tart, you bring him in from that stout 49ers defense to add in a third playable safety there, which I think that makes a huge difference when you talk about the passing offenses that are available throughout the NFL. Makes a huge difference when you have that third playable safety. Looking at the defensive line, I'll let you dig in to the rest of the Eagles. I don't want to go too far and steal everything away from you. But Eagles number 1 in passing defense for me there.
I have the same rankings, and I see what George is saying, and he may be right, but I just look at the rest of this division. I have the Giants coming in at 4. I do like Adoree Jackson. I like Xavier McKinney, as you mentioned, but just in terms of scheme, and now that might be changing, but Dable is an offensive-minded type of head coach. So I forget who's handling the defense in New York at the moment. Then you get to Washington. I just think overall they're a much more stout defense, and I think in the back end I like Bobby McCain as well. Kendall Fuller, William Jackson, like you mentioned. Cowboys too. Maybe we are too high on them, but Malik Hooker, I think is a nice addition. And then Trayvon Diggs, I mentioned it earlier. We're not high on him. We're not sitting here calling Trayvon Diggs one of the top corners in the league. But that playmaking factor, that playmaking ability to cause turnovers for that offense. And I like what Dan Quinn has done with the secondary last year. And then you just mentioned the Eagles. I mean, they're much just cornerbacks alone. They're one of the top pairs in not just this division. They're one of the top pairs in the entire league when it comes to Darius Slay and James Bradbury. You mentioned Avonte Maddox with the depth a little bit. And then at safety position, I know we're a little soft at safety, but we'll see. Obviously, George is very high on Marcus Epps. So if that can kind of come through, if he's playable, we'll see what you get there. But I got Eagles 1 there. Getting into the pass rush, the front 7. So not just pass rush, but ability to stop the run as well. Scotty, I'm going with, again, the New York Football Giants here. Now, this is weird. Do I want to go there? No, I'm not. But this is tough, man, because I think in terms of defensive line, I really like what the Giants have. Yeah. Leonard Williams, obviously the addition of Thibodeau. But if we're talking front 7s as well, and you're mentioning you still have Van Der Esch, you still have Micah Parsons, Anthony Barr. I know he's out at the moment, but he'll be back. You still have DeMarcus Lawrence. And then in terms of Washington, they're deep as well. And if Chase Young is healthy, Jonathan Allen, Montez Sweat, they're a little weak. They're a little softer linebackers than Dallas, but their front line's better. So I'm going to stick with what I have, especially because I haven't seen anything yet out of the Giants to take it the other way. I'm going to go Giants 4. I'm going Dallas 3, Washington 2, Eagles 1. I think the Eagles, in terms of what they brought in terms of linebacker, obviously the Jordan Davis addition in terms of stopping the run, and that's going to open up everything. The Hassan Reddick addition, they are fully loaded in the trenches and in the linebacker room now. So I like them the best, but all 4 teams on the line and in their front sevens, that is where this division is the tightest, in my opinion. It's the hardest ranking to have.
Yeah, 100%. And I have the same exact rankings as you. Just being completely honest here. The Giants, I do, when you take a closer look at what they got going on in the front, especially their defensive line specifically, I definitely like what they have there. It's just adding on the extra layers to the defense at this point now for me with the Giants. And like you said, we'll see how it plays out. I thought they were pretty solid defensively last year. But as far as the rest of the division, just going down the line, Cowboys, yes, I agree with you at 3 there. Ultimately, they have just better linebackers in reality. And like you said, I do love what Dan Quinn does there. Number 2 and number 1 are interesting for me because I almost made Washington number 1. I think I love the Eagles linebackers. I love Nakobe Dean. I love Kaiser White. But I also love what the Washington football team has going on there, just between that front 4. And then you throw in an ascending guy like Jamin Davis, guy like Cole Holcomb, who played really well for them last year. So things like that has me leaning and looking a little differently at Washington. I still have them at number 2. I'm going to bring the Eagles in here. Just because of what they have been able to add. TJ Edwards, we didn't even talk about him in that linebacking core, but he's a guy that heavily affects the run. He reads plays very well, and a great tackler. Kaiser White, we already said it earlier, he led the Chargers in tackles last year. You have Hassan Reddick. You have Davion Taylor, another guy that before he got injured last season showed some signs. Mm-hmm. He showed that he could play a little bit. So I'm interested to have talent within that linebacking room and how that spreads out amongst the team and how that affects the defense, because it's something we've been lacking for years. But ultimately, I think they bring it together mixed with Jordan Davis. You add him up to that front 4. It's beautiful because Jordan Davis is another one of those just huge run stuff and defensive tackles that is just going to take up a lot of space on that defensive line. So I'm very excited for the Eagles defense, as you can see, number 1 in both categories. But nonetheless, yes, I agree with your rankings there.
Which is it's an odd feeling to have, right? And where this is, I know it's probably sounding biased because of what we're wearing and obviously who our teams are, but it's taking bias out of it. I think depth-wise at all positions, they are the most talented defense. Now, we mentioned run stopping. Getting to the rushing attack, what do you got? Another tough one.
It is a tough one, and I know people are gonna probably once again think that I'm riding the Eagles here, but I'll go 1 through 4 for you. 1, Eagles. It's very simple for me. They were the number 1 rushing attack last year, so why would it change any differently? Jalen Hurts is still the second best rushing quarterback in the NFL. He still has that dynamic ability. I expect Miles Sanders either get with it or get lost. This is a contract year. We're either going to see the elite Miles Sanders that we think he can be, or he's done here. It's going to be Kenneth Gainwell season. But nonetheless, the ability of Jalen Hurts, and then something I haven't said yet, that offensive line of the Philadelphia Eagles, the depth on that offensive line. So God forbid anybody goes down. It almost feels like you have another serviceable guy behind each guy on this offensive line. So when we talk about effectiveness of the offensive line, the Eagles have the best offensive line in the division. I think they may have the best offensive line, top 3 in the NFL. And I think that's ultimately where the Eagles, that's going to be their calling card, as it has been, the offensive and the defensive lines. And that's a good way to lead to success. Number 2, I have the Cowboys. They have that duo in the backfield. They have Dak that can keep the offense balanced and, be a major threat. He's the best quarterback in the division, obviously. And I think, having Dak there, having CeeDee Lamb, hopefully for them, they get Michael Gallup back. And have those weapons on the outside, Dalton Schultz. But ultimately, that duo, that lightning and thunder-esque duo of Tony Pollard and Ezekiel Elliott, I think that's amazing. We talked about that when we ranked our running backs. I
Mhm.
told you how I felt about Tony Pollard. Told you how I felt about Zeke. Still a great, I won't say a great, he's still a good back. Tony Pollard just adds another dimension to that offense. Number 3, I have the Washington Commanders, and I think this is where it could get testy because for me, I'm not putting that stock into Saquon Barkley, and I'm not putting that stock into Saquon Barkley as far as him staying healthy for a full
Mhm.
season. If he goes down, that Giants rushing offense is disgusting. And Daniel Jones, I know some people will talk about his legs. He's so clumsy. He's going to fumble the football. He's going to turn
It's
the
gonna
ball over
fall.
and stuff. Yeah, like I don't talk to me about Daniel Jones as a rusher. And I know he had that 90-yard scramble against the Eagles where he tripped and fell in open field without scoring a touchdown. So like I'm not
Yeah.
trying to hear that. He's not that effective of a rusher. I think he had under 300 rushing yards last season with the Giants. We'll see, obviously Brian DeBoer, how does he use Daniel Jones in that rushing offense? Does he use his legs? But right now, I got them number 4. Commanders number 3. I like what Gibson is doing a little bit more. I think there'll be a little bit more sticking to the run as well under Ron Rivera. Carson Wentz keeping him away from mistakes. And I ultimately think the Washington Commanders will have the 3rd best rushing offense in the division.
So we're almost the same, right? And for a second, I thought about putting the Cowboys first, but you mentioned the 2 losses on the offensive line. I think really, really hurts them. Um, So, and you mentioned the ability of the Eagles offensive line. You said top 3. It's most likely the best offensive line. It's the deepest offensive line. And the way they're able to get upfield and run the football. I have the Eagles 1. I have the Cowboys 2. You mentioned Zeke. I still think Zeke is a top 10 running back. You mentioned the addition of Tony Pollard. That offensive line's still going to be good. 3, I have Saquon and the Giants. 4, I have the Washington Commanders.
No, I think that.
Excuse me. Not feeling too hot over here.
Hey, if you have to step away, definitely feel free. Yeah, damn, we got so much going on this morning, but nonetheless, Dylan is not feeling well. He's about to go yak off camera there, of course. Just as far as finishing up here, and I think we will have to kind of reconnect here later on, just to be transparent. Hopefully, get my internet issues fixed so we can do our NFC East fantasy draft. And then hopefully Dylan's feeling a little bit better. He's got to lay off those brews on Saturday nights, man, if we're going to do turf talk in the morning. But nonetheless, you could see that Russian offense, we had Eagles agree there, number 1. Passing offense, I think Dylan, I'm not sure if he got to his, but I'll give you mine. Just going through the passing offense here. New York Giants, I have number 4, George. I don't know how you feel about that. Daniel Jones, just don't believe in them. I don't like their weapons that much. I know they got, they picked up Wan'Dale Robinson. He's got Kenny Galladay. Hopefully he, revamps his career there in New York. But I just overall don't like what they put around Daniel Jones. And I think he has the worst weapons in the division if you look at it. Number 3, I'm going Commanders. I think, Carson Wentz, we'll see. He has the potential to make the Commanders number 2, number 1 passing offense in the division if he can be who he has shown he can be at times with the Eagles and even last season at times. Number 2, I'm going with the Eagles. I think, while Jalen Hurts has his question marks, and like I said, that's why we have the caveat. Washington very well could move up to number 2, number 1 even. That being if Jalen Hurts just turns out to not only not be the guy, but not even be a starter in the NFL, right? Like not be serviceable enough to start in the NFL as a starting QB for the Eagles. If he can just be as good as he was last year, I think the Eagles will have the number 2 passing offense in the division. And, obviously it comes with some minor improvements. He needs to spread the ball out around, as George mentioned in the comments earlier. He did that in the preseason game, not locking in on your number 1 target, right? You don't want him pre-prescribed before the play starts, looking in at AJ Brown, ready to go there. He needs to be able to read through his progressions, see the middle of the field, throw to the left side of the field sometimes. You can do it to the right. Obviously, that's his comfort zone, but you got to be able to spread the ball around all areas of the field in order to be a completely effective quarterback. And we all know this. We need the improvements from Jalen Hurts. But right now, with those weapons, A.J. Brown, Dallas Goedert, Devontae Smith, Quez Watkins, so on and so forth, Miles Sanders, Kenneth Gainwell in the backfield, with those weapons, Eagles have a very dynamic passing offense, and I expect them to be the number 2 passing offense in the division. Number 1, I am going Dallas Cowboys. It's by default here. It's something I talked about earlier in the show. The one advantage the Cowboys have this season in the division is the quarterback position. That's the one area where they clearly have the best guy in the division, I should say. They have the best quarterback in the division, and it's very clear. There's no argument there, right? It's an argument, maybe, Wentz or Hurts for number 2. I'd probably lean Wentz still, just, based on experience and what he has shown positively over his career compared to what Hurts has done just in one season starting so far. But, it's obviously subject to move as well. But number 1 passing offense, I got the Cowboys. I think Dak, he still is going to put up the numbers, even if they are as bad as, what George is saying there in the comments. And ultimately, I don't know if I think they're going to be that bad to where they fall behind like the Commanders or the Giants. But I do think they're not going to be as good as they were last season, which that's the biggest thing here. But as far as, just looking at their offense, they're still going to be able to pass the football. They still have CD Lamb. What's up, my guy? You feeling better, man?
Oh, we're good.
I know you messaged me on the side. I thought we might have to reconnect, but I'm glad to see you back here. Nonetheless, I was just wrapping up the passing offense. So I finished. My bad. Go ahead, bro. Welcome back.
No, I was going to say, shout out to you for keeping the program running, and that had to be the best moment in Turf Talk history.
All we needed was like the trash can on the side, like Donovan McNabb style.
Dude, I'm sitting here. Yeah, excuse me.
See it in your face.
If no one wants to, this is getting it all out, right? But I'm sitting here talking about the rushing attack, and all of a sudden, I'm like, like I'm like, I gotta run. But nonetheless, we're back and we're better than ever over here, Scotty.
There we go.
So although I did not hear your passing attack, we'll see how close we are. At number 4, I'm going with the New York Football Giants. I understand the addition of Brian Dable can get the best out of Daniel Jones, but in terms of wide receivers, like, they've got names, dude. They have names over there. Kenny Golladay, obviously, I don't even think he scored last year, did he? Kadarius Toney, Darius Slayton, Sterling Shepard. They've got a bunch of guys, right?
Yeah.
No one that, really impresses you. And then you mentioned Daniel Jones. I'm not a believer. And then at number 3, I'm going with the Washington Commanders and Carson Wentz here. I like this fit for some reason. I don't know why, especially when we haven't even talked about Riverboat Ron.
Yeah.
And maybe how he can kind of settle in with Carson Wentz and get him, a home here in Washington. We already talked about Terry McLaurin. They have Curtis Samuel, Jahan Dotson. Mm-hmm. If Logan Thomas, I know he's hurt again. If Logan Thomas can be healthy, he's a big athlete, a big target over the middle of the field. We know Carson Wentz likes his tight ends.
Yeah.
So they're 3. At number 2, excuse me. I would love to put the Eagles here. I'm not going to do that. I would love to put the Eagles 1. I'm putting the Eagles at 2, and it's all because of I need to see more out of Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
If I see not perfection like we saw on Friday night, but the quick decision making, the accuracy, the scheme that Sirianni put out there, they'll be bumped up to 1. Eagles at 2. Number 1, Dak, CD Lamb. Dak spreads the ball around. He's going to throw for over 4,000 yards. He's going to throw for 30-plus touchdowns.
Yeah.
So I have the Cowboys at 1.
Yeah, that's the same exact list that I had here. Ultimately, I'm with you. I'm kind of high on Wentz in that offense as well. I just don't know yet, right? Like, you got to see it first. And I did leave the caveat there. The Commanders could easily, maybe become the number 2 passing offense in the division. If the Eagles, we don't know, and that's one of the questions I had about the Eagles coming into this show. Do they stick to that run-dominant offense where they just ran the ball that latter half of the season last season, or do they just fully embrace the weapons that they have in the passing game, and do they go on, some games where they're going to do an air raid with Jalen Hurts attacking a defense? It'll be interesting to see. Obviously, I don't know how balanced that Eagles offense will be.
George said, I need to stop talking. I don't know if he disagrees with my ranking or I'm just a little shaky over here.
Taking deep breaths.
Did you see me in the beginning of the show, bro? I'm sitting here like.
No, I couldn't see. I was having my own internet crisis. So
that's true. We actually in the beginning of the show, Scotty's internet went out, so I was riding solo a little bit, and then for other reasons, Scotty was riding solo for a little bit. Cheers. No,
cheers. All right, man. So
just fill up a mimosa real quick.
Right. Hey, you got to get what do they call it? The hair of the dog or something like that. Get you right. But let's go ahead. Let's get into the NFC East full-on rankings. We talked about the offense and defense. Mm-hmm. How do we think these teams are going to play out? Who do you have fourth in the division, Dylan?
Can you really go anywhere but the Giants? I mean, honestly.
Yeah, I don't think you can. I don't.
That's where I'm going. I don't see it. I know there's hope. I know they're youthful on defense. I like their defensive front. I like Adoree Jackson back there. I like the Dable addition. If Saquon is healthy, that helps them greatly. But Daniel Jones, I cannot buy in. This receiving core, what they did last year was unbelievable. I don't even know if Sterling Shepard scored like 2 touchdowns. So I don't like the Giants at all offensively, and I think they'll struggle a lot this year on offense. At number 3, I have the Washington Commanders. I think they probably are in that 7 to 8 win range. I think they'll kind of be a thorn in the side for the Eagles and Cowboys at the top of this division. They're going to be super competitive in those games. Love their defense. Obviously, last year they were talked about as a top 5 unit. They're young. Love Jonathan Allen. Love Chase Young. They're going to get after the quarterback. They're going to stop. They're going to slow down the run game. They'll be good, but they won't compete for the division title. At number 2, I have the Dallas Cowboys. I'm not even sure Dallas wins double digit. Dude, they're brutal. The beginning of their schedule is brutal. I don't know if you've seen it, but there's Tampa week 1. There's the Bengals in there. There's the Rams in there. There's the Eagles in there. This is all within the first 5 or 6 weeks. So I think they could either get out to a very slow start or raise some eyebrows and impress you through the first 5 or 6 weeks. And that, obviously, as Eagles fans, we don't want to see. Yeah. But I just think all around they didn't get better, but I don't think they got worse enough to where either team has leaped, meaning the Giants or Washington has leaped them. At number 1, dude, I'm going with the Eagles again. Sorry, guys. I know I got the shirt on. I know the signs behind me might sound a little biased, but they are fully loaded. They're ready to go. I love what they built defensively. I love the addition of AJ Brown. You have the best offensive line in football. Your depth on both sides of the line is awesome. It all comes down to Hurts. But even if Hurts, we talked about this all the time, Scotty, even if he's just what he was last season, they're still going to win 10 games with that schedule and the help around him and the roster. If he's better, 12 wins, maybe. Division title. So that's what I got for the NFC East. It's going to be competitive as always. Even if the Giants only win 5 games, they're still going to be competitive games when the Eagles and the Cowboys and the Commanders get together with them. So we'll see. I know everyone likes to joke around, right? The NFC least. But the one thing you can say is it's always competitive. Can you say that about the North? Like, I know it's a rivalry and it goes back decades on decades, but when the Packers and the Bears get together, or Packers and the Lions get together, are we like, oh boy, this is going to be a good game? No, Aaron Rodgers drops 42.5 on them. Like, so this division's always competitive. So I love it.
Yeah, and I think that's good. I think that's good that you point that out, because ultimately I do think I think all of these teams will be a pain or a thorn in the side for all the other teams, right? It's just the way the division is. And to be honest, all of these teams, I would say maybe the Cowboys, between the Cowboys and Giants, as far as like the least intimidating defense in the division, but still solid defenses in the division. Nonetheless, they can get stops. Like, these are talented defenses in the division, and I ultimately think that's what George is getting at by saying that 3-1 or so close. I'm with you though. I do have the Giants at number 4. I have them around 5-6 wins on the season. Just not impressed. I don't think Daniel Jones is the guy, and I think that is the main thing they'll come out of this season with. I think they'll see some nice improvements under Brian DeBoer. I think he's going to make some changes there, and he may make Daniel Jones look a little bit better, like George has alluded to throughout our shows on Turf Talk here this season. But ultimately, I don't think it's good enough. I don't think it's going to be enough of an improvement, and I don't think the team around him is good enough. Looking at number 3, I do have the Commanders at number 3 here. Now that is a caveat. I think the Commanders, if Carson Wentz is good, they can win the division. I do think they can win the division. They have the talent around him. They have the talent around him to do it. He just can't make those mistakes. Ron Rivera is that guy, right? He's one of the best. Would you say, I know we talked about who's the worst coach. Is Ron Rivera the best coach in the division right now?
There's an argument for it to be made, right?
Yeah.
Like, he's the
most experienced for sure, most success.
It's not even, he's just a leader. Dude.
Yeah.
Like, he just always has his teams, even back when he was in Carolina, so uniformed and so they're just a unit, right? And he just seems like he's got a good hold of the locker room in Washington, even with all the nonsense that goes on around that organization and the owner and the fan base and the stadium and yada, 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 right? Most of it's garbage, but he keeps them somewhat consistent.
Yeah, I'm just laughing at George's comment down here because that was definitely the hashtag for a while. I know for Phil especially. Oh,
he was elite, bro.
He was elite. He was, man.
For a hot sec.
But no. So number 3 for the Commanders. I'm with you on Ron Rivera there as well. Number 2, I have the Cowboys. Obviously, I have the Cowboys around 10 wins on the season. I don't know about that. I'm with you. Yeah. That's me giving them a benefit of the doubt. That's me not wanting to eat my words regarding the Cowboys this season. But I do see the point here because there is a world where things could go monumentally bad for the Cowboys, and they could end up at 3rd or even 4th in the division. Because once again, the way I ranked the defense, I gave the Cowboys some credit, but I also just look at them as like a soft team. And I look at the Giants and I look at the Commanders and I just think of them as hardened teams. And the Eagles, obviously.
For some reason, I agree with you. Yeah, like it's
like I think the Cowboys defense, it has talent. And, oh my goodness, Dan Quinn, his name was slipping my mind. He's a good defensive coordinator, but just something soft about those Cowboys to me, man. And ultimately, I do think that could be their thorn in their side. That could be end up what brings them down a little bit, is just that the Giants, Commanders, and Eagles are just a little bit more gritty. And I think part of that is that this division, these expectations are never given to these other 3 teams, aside from Eagles fans on their own team. But from Nationals' perspective, outside looking in, the Cowboys are always just this coveted team. They talk about Dak Prescott, and that's why they're going to do this and that. And I think, with that comes just a little bit of grittiness from the other teams wanting that spot. So I can see where George is coming from with Cowboys finishing 4th, but I got them too. I would say 3rd would be their basement.
3rd, I just don't see any way, shape, or form that the Giants outbeat. Like the Giants to beat out Dallas would probably have to go 8-9 or 7-10 at worst, and I just don't foresee that happening.
And that's kind of where I would go as well. Number 1, Eagles, and this one's interesting because I know like we've talked about the whole show. It sounds like we're being homers, but when you just look at everything outside the quarterback, and I think there's something to notate there. Jalen Hurts isn't the worst quarterback in this division either. Daniel Jones is, and some would argue maybe Jalen Hurts over Wentz. That's a conversation for TBD, a later day. But when you look at this Eagles roster outside of Jalen Hurts, even it's completely stacked, and they're stacked at the most important positions in football aside from quarterback, which is the offensive and defensive lines. They have depth there, and that is the biggest thing for me because we know at least one or two of those guys go down each season on each side. So you need the guys to back them up and provide quality production out of your replacements. And I think that's going to be a key for the Eagles. But then also looking at the Eagles' schedule, you talked about Dallas's start. The Eagles have one of the easiest starts as of right now, based on talent from last year. They have one of the easiest starts that I've seen so far throughout, all the teams in the NFL. Aside from that, 13 out of the 17 games that the Eagles have scheduled this season, they are favorited in right now. 13 out of 17 games they are favorited in right now. And that includes games where they are marked even with the Packers, stuff like that, right? And I have the Eagles at 11 wins, just, briefly, like we've been doing. Going through their schedule. That's me being modest. That's me having them slip one up to like the Giants or slip one up to like a fucking Lions team or something. Like that's with me, not giving them the benefit of the doubt. 11 wins. That's me going over, just what they were able to do last season with the lack of talent that they had there and the youth that they had there. That's where I'm at with the Eagles. I got them winning the division. And it may be more than 11 wins, man. And I hate to sound like that. I really do, Dylan.
I know, man. It sounds like we're biased, but I think that is going to wrap up this NFC East breakdown. Guys, we appreciate you guys so much for everyone that commented. George, of course, especially you. Check us out later, possibly later today, or at some point, you will get our NFC East all division draft. Check us out on Twitter at DSM_media. Hit the follow button. Check us out on YouTube as well. Subscribe, like this video, share it out, whatever you got to do. We greatly, greatly appreciate it. Have a great rest of your Sunday. Enjoy the day.